Moving to the other side of the world isn't as easy as you think. A study by the University of Melbourne found that 39% of migrants experienced moderate to high levels of psychological distress. Sounds stressful. To help you learn from the mistakes of those who have moved, and to help you understand all of the things that will help you to be more successful with your new life in Australia, I spoke to two new migrants from Germany to share what it's like moving back to Australia with your family who's never lived there and you've had so many years away. Is Australia really as affordable as living in Europe? What's it like adapting for your family who's never lived here, and for you who might even feel like a foreigner in your own country? And if you're thinking of making Australia your new home, and you're in those first early stages of trying to think what do you need to do next, then speak to the sponsors of today's podcast, True Blue Migration Services. Get yourself a free visa assessment when you mention that Johnston Life, and let them tell you your best chances of migrating to Australia. Speak to them now on their website at truebluemigration.com. G'day Matt and Mel, how's it going?
Good. Good.
How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. How did you get affected? Do you have the flooding the other day, or?
No, nothing.
Nothing yet. Everybody keeps asking, but where we are, no flooding.
Oh, fantastic! It's pretty good. Because we a bit. I mean, our creek goes up every time it rains, it seems, but not as bad as a few years ago. Tell us about your life before you started your move back to Australia, because it's slightly different from you guys, because I'm sensing an accent from one, but then a familiar from another.
Well, so Matt's Australian, and I'm German. So we actually met in England. So we spent 4 years in London. And then decided we wanted to have children, but also knew we didn't want to have them in England. So we moved to
London, really.
In London, in particular. And then we moved to Germany to be closer to my family as well. Plus, you have a fantastic system there with maternity leave and child support, all that kind of things. And we knew we wouldn't have that in Australia either. So we decided to have our children in Germany. And then we spent 11.5 years in Germany.
I found the Australian parental system, is that the best way to call it? A lot better than the UK. So you definitely made the good move to get out of the UK or whatever with regards to having the kids. What was it like then in London? What made you want to move out having kids there?
Your call.
My call? Well, I wasn't convinced.
Family thing, obviously.
Yeah, well, I was sick at some stage and I had a fairly bad experience with the doctors in the UK. And we also had a colleague and a friend who had a baby shortly before we left. And it didn't go very well. And that child, unfortunately, is quite handicapped. So the combination of the two just made me not want to have kids there. Plus, being in London where we were working, it's just not like kid friendly. I mean, just try to get around with a pram. I did that once when our daughter was born. She was, I think, 6 months old or something. Yeah, I knew why we moved. It was just too painful. And plus, and that's another thing, Matt's visa was running out. So we had to make the decision if he's going to go back to Australia to apply for a visa again, or if we move to Germany. And so Germany seemed to be the next logical idea, really. And I wasn't ready yet to go to Australia either. And he wasn't neither. He wanted to stay in Europe for a bit longer and see a bit more of Europe. So it was just the next logical
The holiday
path.
wasn't over yet. So after we moved, finding out how cheap childcare was, the how well paid the maternity or paternity leave was, and just how common it was just, this is a fantastic deal. Yeah, we're staying in Germany. So
Absolutely. So why then, after 11 years in Germany, did you decide that you wanted to move to Australia?
I guess that's my story. I moved, I left the country after 30 odd years, I don't remember how many. And I think if I'd moved away younger, it just wouldn't have mattered. I wasn't sort of too wedded to anywhere. And I know when we first started getting to know each other that I said, look, if you don't see yourself possibly moving here one day, then I think we should stay friends. Because I'd had enough friends who told me stories of they'd gotten with or married someone from another country, or a friend of theirs had, they said it's an issue that was bubbling in the background, or could. And it could be, not always, like a make or break thing. Well, if you don't want to move, but I really do, this is going to be a problem. So I just put it forward right from the start. And so it was always like this thing. But then over the years, at least for me in Germany, it just sort of faded. But we talked about it enough. So it sort of stayed a thing. So when we ended up moving, it was like, well, what are we doing this for? But we'd come so far in the process that, well, we'll keep going. So it was kind of me, really.
It was also COVID, kind of was the last thing, because his dad got sick. And that was when the borders were closed, and we knew if his dad wouldn't make it through, he could neither visit him in hospital nor could he go to his funeral. And we always had some money aside that if something happens to his family, siblings, parents, he could get on the next plane and just go. And then we were sitting in Germany, his dad being really sick, and we didn't know if he's ever actually going to see him again. And that kind of was the catalyst, really. And that's when the whole process started off, looking into visa and that kind of stuff.
So I guess the short thing was he was always there. And the other thing was that we sort of, with our two kids, we're saying, well, look, if we're going to do this, it has to be soon, because otherwise they'll get too old enough, and kind of have too many friends and feel put down too many roots here, that it'd be kind of wrong to then say, well, all right, now just let that go and we'll start again. So we just said, if we're going to do it, it has to be at the time we picked, or maybe when they're late teens kind of thing.
I don't know.
But then we would have lived there for so long that, it doesn't make sense anymore.
How old are your kids?
10 and 7.
Okay. Yeah. So I see what you mean. Like right at that age where they're kind of young enough to not really know much better, in the sense that it's okay for them to be able to make that transition. They haven't got these really strong bonds and connections. I mean, it's not to say that their bonds aren't strong. It's just, they're still developing them. I hear of a lot of people that think, particularly with older kids than mine. I mean, mine are like 4 and not even 2, that they kind of want to do it at those school transitions, like perhaps before they go to secondary school, that type of thing. And, education starts to get a bit more serious. But it's interesting to hear about what you say with regards to having those potentially difficult conversations really early on in relationships. I mean, I kind of had the same thing with Sam, in the sense that she had always known that I'd wanted to move to Australia at some point. Not that it was, when we met, like I'm going. If anything, when we met, it took about 10 years before we ended up really starting the process. But I speak to loads of people who have partners that don't want to move to the other side of the world for kind of obvious reasons. And I guess the best tip I can give, and it sounds like you did the same thing, is you have to have those conversations really, really early. I mean, I don't speak to many people whereby moving to Australia is like, they just wake up one day and it's like, oh, I'm going to move. It always seems to be one of those things that's a deep down feeling for them. They've had that feeling for a long time. So if you do have those feelings and you do have a significant other, the best thing that you can do straight away is have that conversation and just kind of start to sound out these ideas, rather than, it's like, saying to your wife, or saying to your girlfriend, saying to your fiance, or whoever, by the way, I want to move to the other side of the world. Is that okay? Like, of course it's not going to be fine.
Yeah, and it was a long process. It took us a week. So we started this conversation on a weekend. What are we going to do? Because he said, look, if latest when I retire, I want to go back. And I thought, retirement on the beach, not too bad. I could live with that. But it's easy to say that, but there's a lot more to it, because it's not only where will we end up, but it was also, what if we have children and we separate? What's going to happen? Where are we going to live? How are we going to handle that with potential children in our life? So we had a week going back and forth of how we would do it. And at some stage we both decided we're going to give it a go, because if we don't try, we won't know. And I felt strongly that I do want to try it, because what if I don't, and I meet a German partner who is not so nice, whatever whatever that might turn out to be? Will I always wonder what if? And I didn't want that. I wanted to try it, and we've been together for 15 years now, and so far we're both alive and have 2 children, so it's okay. But it's an important conversation to have. It definitely is.
I guess the earlier you start the conversation, the more it kind of is a part of your relationship. But the later it comes in is, well, I was quite settled into, I guess, rhythm A, and now this is possibly coming into the mix of, well, we just say, possibly spoiling my happy vision for one person, I guess. But if it's in there like as soon as possible, it's like, well, this could come up at some point. So you're at least open to it, I hope.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't talk enough about their futures, do they? Particularly in the early stages of relationships. It's not a bad thing to sound someone out when it comes to that kind of deep and meaningful, where do you want your life to end up? What visa are you on then, Mel? How did it work for someone who's been married for so long but in another country, married to an Australian? What did you have to do to be able to move here?
So you would think it's easier, right? It's not. It's actually more difficult. So I'm on a subclass 100, which means I've got permanent residency. So what happened is, or what we had to do is, we had to prove that our relationship is legitimate. So we had to basically tell them everything about us. They wanted to know if we live in the same household, how we share the household chores.
So I said I do all. Obviously, I do it all.
Of course he does. We had to prove that we share finances. We had to prove that we both care for the children. We had to prove that we appear as a partnership to others, which means I had 3 people. Now, what's it called? The AAA form that they had to fill in. It's a form that,
good form, don't they? Immigration.
Oh, they do.
Yes.
And it's basically, so I needed 3 of those, which was basically people. Well, I can't remember what it's called. Swearing that
like a testimonial or something.
Yeah.
Is it like a fancy name? They call it an affidavit or something like that.
Yeah,
could do.
Yeah, something. Anyway,
it was something to say. Yes, I have known them for X period of time.
Yes.
And yes, I can state that categorically that it's a legitimate relationship,
Yes.
and it's not just something that's just made up for the purposes of one person getting a visa.
What was the weirdest kind of evidence that you had to produce for them? Like, what kind of bits of evidence did you? I mean, you've got sworn statements, but are there any other weird things that you found were quite effective at proving your relationship?
Well, I think because we had been together for 10 years at the stage. I mean, the sheer volume of evidence we had, picking the evidence, because we had to bring pictures where we were seen with other people. But often, what do? One of you takes the picture. So one is in the picture and the other one isn't. So I had to go through, I don't know how many thousands of pictures just to pick those where we were both in it. We had to produce invites.
There were photos where you have 2 photos and you could see that it was like from the same scene, and like one person's taking a photo and then you've given the camera to the other person, where you kind of splice it so you have 2 different photos and you can see it's the same event and we were both there. And
we had to provide holiday. I think that was one of the more difficult ones. We had to provide evidence that we went on holidays together. Now, being German, I'm a bit of a keeper when it comes to documentation. So I kept all my flight details. So I was able to produce probably 90% of the flights we took together, because some of them were paid by the company we were working for. So I flew to other countries to work, and then he would join for the weekend and we would spend the weekend there. So we didn't have any evidence of that. We had to prove where we were in the last 10 years, independently and together.
Yeah,
it was endless. It was endless. And we did it ourselves because I didn't want to spend money on an agent, because I felt we had a fairly strong case with 2 children and a marriage and all that. So, but it was just painful just to collect the evidence and to put it together. And I had to go to Frankfurt, which is about 2 hour drive away from my hometown, to go and get the medical done. So my HIV test and the urine test and the X-ray and I don't know what else. And on the way, I sprained my ankle. So, there you go. It's just...
You have to pretend it didn't hurt, probably.
Yeah, it was... Oh, no, it was after. So I left the practice and went to the Australian shop to buy my husband and my daughter Vegemite, which they both love. And on the way there, I sprained my ankle. Anyway, it's or torn a ligament. It was actually a torn ligament. But anyway, I put proper effort in.
Were you concerned at any stage filling in the copious amount of forms and things, in the sense of, because the Australian government's very tricky. If you don't do the forms right, you don't get your money back. And the partner visas, they are the most expensive ones.
Yep.
Was there ever that concern? I mean, what's
all
your
the
background?
time.
What do you do for a living? Are you a lawyer? Are you quite good at forms?
I wish.
I don't know about Mel, but I wasn't as concerned. Maybe it's just that Aussie, that Queensland thing. But when I applied for because I went over to the UK on the now defunct working holiday maker visa, and that was just, here's a form, here's some money, etc., and it was fine. But then I stayed on the, again now defunct, Class 1 highly skilled migrant visa. And for that one, I think I had to put in a folder that was about that thick. And it was a similar kind of process. It was, the end of the process was I was standing at Australia Post because I had to come back here to put it in. Because I guess I appreciate the point of fairness of, well, if you don't get it and you could disappear into the country and we have to find you and those sorts of things. So it came back and I was standing at Australia Post where I had to submit it with a friend, and he looked at this folder and he said, "Do you really want to do this?" I was like, "Well, I've come this far. I put so much effort in." And it was a similar process of seeing an accountant to prove income and so forth. And a tip that a friend gave me who'd done it 5 years prior or more said, the thing you want to remember is this: the person who will look through your paperwork is probably getting paid like minimum wage. The person who will stamp it is getting paid so much more. So what you don't want to have them do is say, you don't want to give them any reason to say, too hard basket, put it aside and take the next one from the pile. And at some point, they'll come back to yours. So we kind of encourage Mel to apply the same logic of get ourselves a nice new folder with those, those section dividers, and then label everyone that followed. Here's our section 1, our section 2, from the form. Yeah. And try it the same way. So if they had to find anything, it's, well, open that section.
Make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, so that if there's anything as where was something, then you look at the front insert to say, here's it. So they shouldn't have any reason to set it aside, hopefully.
But you see, I'm in finance, so that's right up my street.
There you go.
But of course, it's, you push that button and you have no idea what's going to happen. And the next thing was at the time, so when I applied, we knew we wanted to go September 2023 because of the school. So our son would have started school and our daughter would have gone to secondary school. So that was the right time for us to go. So I applied for it, and at the time it said it can take up to 2 years. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should apply for it now. And, we also had the backup plan of what if I get the visa sooner. Yeah, I applied on the 28th of September, and I got it on the 26th of November in the same year. So 2 months and I had my visa. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm 1.5 years too early now. What are we going to do? So I had to fly over just to get a stamp that I didn't even get. It's just electronic now. And I was hoping I would, I thought I would actually come and get my stamp and I'd be, that's my stamp. I didn't even get a stamp. So, but, so yeah.
Because you came over just to activate it, and then at least the whole moving over process, you can take it at your time.
After that, yes. So I had exactly 12 months by the day to enter the country, which I did.
Yep.
And I was just here for a week, and I came. So we live in Bundaberg. So I actually drove up here. So I landed Sunday morning, and Monday morning I got in a car. I drove up here. Had a look around to schools and a bit the area where we could potentially live. And then on Tuesday, I drove back down to Brisbane, and on Saturday morning, I flew out again, flew home to my husband and my children.
What made you want to move to Bundaberg? I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
through Matt's connections.
Well, in the end, it was.
Yeah.
So we originally, like yourself, we wanted to go to Brisbane because we love Brisbane. But as you know, the house prices there aren't as convenient as they used to be.
Yeah.
And so his sister has been, that too, probably. And his sister has been in Bundaberg for
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
And his parents actually moved down from Rockhampton a year ago.
Okay.
So we thought, if we move 16,000 Ks to then be again 4 hours away from the family, why not just move to Bundy, where the houses are still kind of affordable, borderline, I'd say, but
more affordable.
But it's a bit easier than Brisbane for sure.
What's the average price of a house in Bundaberg then? Because I hear that Brisbane is, well, from a rental perspective, we're now the second highest. I think Sydney's only beating us from a rental perspective, and I think we're definitely top three, if not second as well, for the highest average house price. What's a house going to cost in Bundaberg nowadays?
Well, I guess it depends on what you want, but I'd say you have at least $500,000.
Okay. Is that a 4-bedroom?
No.
Three?
It could be three.
Could be 3, possibly 4. Would you get a pool?
It depended, really. It was the one thing I could say is from the time we looked, in the couple of months we looked, it seemed to be all over the place.
Okay.
We found one place they were asking, I think, like mid to high fives, and you just have a quick scan saying the amount of work that you would have to put into it to clean up like a patio, like a tile patio area, to like just the aged kind of look at the inside of the house. And then I think we drove 10 minutes around the road to a place for maybe 80K less, and went, what would you have to do besides put a key in the door?
Yeah.
So it was quite a mixed situation, I felt, of size of land, size of house, spec, etc. But they love shit.
Seem to be putting their house up and charging whatever they want, really, then, rather than listening to perhaps what the market is asking.
That's sometimes how it feels. It's like they do, they put their finger in the wind and test if they can get it or not. Yeah. It was definitely an interesting process. I mean, it took us 3 months to find something that we liked, and we literally just moved in the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
But
how do the house prices though compare to where you're from in Germany? For what you'd pay and for kind of what you'd get, are they more expensive, less?
Well, I would assume it's more or less the same. So obviously I find it a bit difficult with the conversion of it, because the exchange rate has been up and down quite a bit as well. So the house we were living in before we moved over was sold by the owner for, I think, 450,000, and the house is in its 40s and hasn't been renovated since it was built. Wow. So yeah, it's just as expensive, I'd say.
What about the cost of living and things in Germany? How have you found it compared to now being in Australia?
Can I jump in with a story?
Go for it.
When years ago, when we got married, my brother came over, and we went down to, like Mel said, like, here's a list of jobs. I need you to go down to the shops and get all this stuff for me. And over there, right, you can get alcohol and a mop and like all in the one shop, right? Yep. And so my brother and I go down to the shop, and we just happen to go through like the drink section first on the way to the other part, and he's just saying he loves beer. And he's looking through going, and he sort of starts the question and then doesn't finish, and then starts the next one. It was sort of like, and it came to me, is there a sale on at the moment? Is this a special time? And I was just like, look, I had my list and I was kind of focused, and I said, no, why? He's like, you mean these prices are normal?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, why? He's like, I'll take a case of this, I'll take a case of that. And I thought it was just funny. Oh, yeah, he likes his beer and the prices are a bit lower. Fast forward to when we came over and we kind of settled into this rental house a bit. And we thought, oh, let's go down and get like a little something to celebrate moving in and stuff. And we were just gobsmacked at prices. Just looking at oh, maybe I'll try. Maybe that'll be no. That's wow. That's so much dearer. And I remember this story thinking, oh, that's why he was so like, I'll get all these cases of beer even though I'm here for 2 weeks because this price is fantastic. And my
I'm going to drink them all.
brother-in-law said the same thing. Brother-in-law said, don't you remember when we were over? I was enjoying a glass or two every night because the prices were so low there. So I mean, I guess that's just one example, but it feels in some ways, at least doing a euro to dollar conversion at times, that it's just a lot dearer. It feels that way.
But you know what? I think it very much depends, because what I find here, particularly when it comes to groceries, that if the more you buy in season, the more the cheaper it is. Like when we arrived here in September, grapes, a 500-gram bucket of grapes was like $10. Now they're $4.50.
Yeah.
Now I'm buying them. I wouldn't buy them for $10. And you have to be very careful. And as you said earlier, talking about Coles and Woolies and Aldi, you very much have to compare your prices. I mean, the amount we spend here on food, yeah, it's a lot.
We buy a lot of our fresh produce as well from local greengrocers now,
Yeah.
because that's even cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, you think to yourself, like, definitely, I agree. I find myself eating a lot more seasonally than I did in the UK, where the prices for fresh food didn't really fluctuate at all. Obviously. Things like strawberries in the summer, they would come down in price. They would get much cheaper, but you never really got the fluctuation the other way. I saw a pack of snow peas. I can't remember what time of year it was. It just put me off wanting to eat snow peas in Australia for the rest of my life, because I think they were something like $37 a kilo. And I'm like, I can eat meat for cheaper than that. Why would I want to try and convert to snow peas? Like, I'm never having them again. And it sometimes feels like that price difference between the seasonality that you get in the big supermarkets. You then go to your local greengrocers, and it's like sometimes they're getting rid of stuff for like 99 cents a kilo. Don't get me wrong, it's probably slightly towards its end, but I mean, I don't know about most people. I don't go out and buy fruit and veg to then leave it in the fridge for a week or two. Do you know what I mean? I think, I'm going to eat that now. And, it doesn't matter that it probably needs eating right away.
But it also tastes different because they harvest it here when it's ripe, whereas in Europe, everything that you get, your grapes and your melons and whatever it is, or your watermelons, our kids love watermelon. Back home, they take it off the trees, the bushes, whatever, when they're not ripe yet, and it tastes different. Whereas here, you might be right with it's being close to the end, but it has a much richer taste to it.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's just different.
Yeah, absolutely. What has been the biggest challenge with your move over here so far?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know my answer.
Fair enough then.
Well, driving. I come from a country where you drive very fast and you have really good roads, whereas here they're not so good and you don't drive that fast because you can't, because the streets are not that good. I think that takes a bit of adjusting for me. It's also people here are lovely. I love the Australians. They're very welcoming. They love to chat. It's all great. But I find it difficult to get into the deeper friendships, if you know what I mean. So it's easier I find it easy to meet people. That's not a problem. But you have to be the proactive one. Other thing, it doesn't.
Except for the people in our neighborhood.
Oh, the neighbors are great. We've just met the neighbors today. They're awesome. But no, it's just, I don't know. If you're not the one following up and wanting to meet up, it's a bit slow, I'd say.
I've chatted about this to Sam, and my theory on this, because I mean, don't get me wrong, when you're moving over and you're older, you've got kids, finding new friends is challenging. And if you think about it from the other people's perspective, like they're in an established routine, right? They've got their own friends, they've got their own social circles, and then you're this new person that's come along. And don't get me wrong, everyone's friendly, everyone's trying to be a friend, but you're trying to add in to someone's assumingly already busy social life. And I think sometimes people, they get lulled into this false sense of security with Australian friendliness, because they just kind of assume, oh, they were really, really friendly. Why aren't they, wanting to be my friend more overtly? And you got to kind of think to yourself, hang on, mate. Like, I had this friend, right? And he had a theory that you only ever need 7 friends in your life. And I was like, 7? Like, that's a very specific number. Like, not nothing to do with the smallness. And he said, no, think about it. There's only 7 days in the week. So if I had 7 friends, I could see one on a corresponding day of the week and just keep rotating through them. And he said, like, otherwise, how can you kind of manage and foster these deep, meaningful relationships if you've just got too many friends? You don't have the time to see them. And it's a bit like this, you're trying to make new friends with people that already have big social lives, but then you don't want to be the person to kind of put yourself out or try and make that commitment to them. And you're just expecting them to, they've already got enough friends. It's difficult enough for them to then think, oh, do you know what? I'm going to go and see that new person in the neighborhood because I feel a bit charitable to them. It's like, no, it's against our nature, isn't it? To want to be that kind. We feel like, oh, it's bad to be a bit pushy on people. Hey, do you want to go for a drink? Hey, do you want to go for a coffee? Like, what the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no, and then you're not their friend anyway. But people, I think people at our age particularly, they're just too scared to kind of, well, ask them. And if they say no, then you've definitely got your answer.
But in return, it means you really have to like your partner, because you will spend a lot of time with them.
Yep.
It's I mean, we are fairly lucky because we still have his parents around and his sister and her family around, and they have been fantastic, absolutely supportive. And, they're great. I love them. But, it's still his side of the family. So there's, I mean, my sister-in-law and I were like sisters. She's the sister I never had, but
Lovely.
it's just, but it's still, you still try to be careful because you don't want to mind too much about him.
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But no, you have to be aware that if you move and you don't know anyone, you will spend a lot of time with your partner in the beginning. And if you already have issues, the issues will follow. They don't just stay in your old country and you come here and everything's new and you start fresh. That's not how this works. And you have to be aware of that. And I think moving particularly this far, you have to have a fairly solid relationship. I mean, don't get me wrong. I could, sometimes.
Ruthless. Strong neck.
But it goes both ways. But it can be tough. It can be tough.
As if we didn't all need further relationship tests in our lives, everything seems to just be a challenging test nowadays. But now that you've made the move, how has living in Australia kind of met up to your expectations? Because I'm assuming, Mel, you visited before, but you've never really lived here for a long period of time.
So the longest I've always been here was 5 weeks for a holiday. But because we were always with family or friends, it wasn't such a big step. Plus, and I think that was my big plus, I lived in England for 4 years and I went there by myself at the time. So I know what it means to be new and be in a different country and speak a different language. So the step wasn't that big. I was more worried about the children not be able to adjust as well as they have. I was more worried about them because I also knew that if they don't feel comfortable, it will be a lot harder on us. We were lucky. It worked out right. They're going to the right school. The teachers have been fantastic. The other kids have been great. They've welcomed them with open arms. So we had a lot of luck. To be fair, we also had a lot of luck. And there weren't really big obstacles other than getting signed up for Medicare, which took forever. But
and Ergon.
And Ergon, yeah. So Yeah.
Ergon?
Ergon Energex. I think it's Energex down in the
Energies. Yeah. So
down
it's an
south.
energy company. Yeah.
Outside of the Great Southeast or whatever term it's Ergon, but I think it's more or less the same firm
They're
broadly.
probably the same. They just changed the names because probably for tax reasons, don't they?
I guess so. Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't really a big adjustment. I don't know, how was it for you? I mean, you came back after 16 years.
I said to my family before we were about 3 months or so to go, I think, maybe 6, whatever. And I said, I think it's going to take at least 6 months for me to readjust. And as I said it, I saw both my siblings just have the same expression of, why? And I said, I've been gone for about a third of my life. The thoughts of what's the same, what's different. Like I'd come back, like what my dad said once, like, you'll go this way and we'll keep going this way. And so I tried not to come back just expecting that it'll be what it was and that'll be that. So it's been in some ways good, like it's sort of just like it was. So many things are similar, but then some things are, like when we moved out of the rental place we were in, my sister said, oh yeah, did you get a bond clean done? What's that? She said, but you know what that was. It's been 16 odd years, and did we have them back then? Things like this. Oh yeah, and coming back to maybe regional Queensland, although Brisbane and stuff have it too. The motorbikes with the Canon exhausts, the jacked up 4-wheel drives, and I haven't lived around that for a really long time.
Have you got a fishing shirt yet?
Don't have a BCF shirt yet, but I have seen a lot of people with them, and the
standard issue in Bundaberg. They just hand them into you. They'd be hanging up already in your
I keep swatting the person away.
And remember as well, you can't. You've got your everyday one, then you have to get a fancy one for special occasions.
True. Like I guess you got to get like the everyday as a pluggers, and then the dining out pluggers.
Exactly.
No, we walk barefoot
for when you go to the RSL.
Yeah. And when you just want to go to shops, you don't need anything.
Yeah, you go barefoot. I mean,
absolutely,
why not?
Absolutely. Just watch out. It's summer. It gets a little bit warm. What are your plans for the future?
I don't want to move anytime soon. Ever again. I've had enough.
I was like, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah, very much so. I just really, I mean, when we were living in Germany, because we knew at some stage we would be going, it was like we were always half in a suitcase, half not. One leg was in, one leg. So we didn't really make a big effort to, how would I put that, to be proper part of it. Like we made friends and everything, but it's there's always this thing in the back of your head, and you're like, yeah, why bother? But I'm in my 40s now. I wanna arrive. I wanna stay here, and I wanna be here, and I wanna say I'm done. And I'm glad we bought this house now, and I finally have the feeling, okay, I think I'm settling down now, and that's what I was after, because it's been a long time coming, and I just wanna say I'm here and I'm done. That's my thing. I don't know.
Prior to moving, you find yourself not wanting to make any big commitments to anything. Like we found, even decorating, we were like, well, there's no point redoing that decorating in the house because we're not going to be here. Making big purchases, you think to yourself, I mean, aside from also having to pay for a bloody expensive visa, that's going to hurt your chances as well. But you think, oh no, that TV will be fine. I don't want to get a new TV. I don't want to get a new car. I don't want to, you just, why? Because in a few years' time, I'm going to be making the move. I mean, it'd be extra different from you, from how quickly your visa was granted. Like, oh, it wasn't as long as I was perhaps expecting. But yeah, you spend a lot of your life when you decide, you know what, I'm going to move here. You just put things on hold, and I don't think people recognize sometimes how much like kind of background stress, like it's not one of the major stresses of moving, but it still exists in your mind. The fact that you're not making this commitment to something. That I felt exactly the same when I got here. I was like, that's it. I want to buy that thing that I've always wanted to buy for like the last however many years. And that's it. You just do. I mean, you just moved, so you don't really have any money to be able to do that. You've got to kind of start saving again.
Yeah.
But people don't recognize those little things about they're not an obvious problem or stress. You don't really think about it, but when you get it, I think it's probably been about 3.5 years that, not that I want to move from Australia, but I'm finally of that kind of a bit more open-minded to doing something new. Like at first I was like, nope, not doing it. I've had enough. I'm here now. That's it.
Well, it's interesting because when we were talking to people back home about us moving, everyone's like, oh wow, you're going to Australia, it's this big massive thing. Oh, you're going to Australia and that's so cool. And then the next thing is, but there are snakes and spiders, why would you move there? And then they're like, but actually it's pretty cool that you're going. And I every time I'm like, oh, you have no idea what's behind all of that. It's not just we pack up and we go. That was a lot of work and a lot of preparation. And even now sitting here, we had a chat the other day. We're like, we could have done this better and we could have done that differently. And all of a sudden you realize being here now, we have to pay because we got rid of 95% of our things that we owned.
Yeah, we did.
Right? There we go. And now we're like, we should have taken this bit. And you know what? There was still space because we didn't have a proper container. We just had a small one. But it's like, but that would have fitted in too. And I could have taken that one too. And do you remember that one is so much cheaper back home? We're so stupid. Why didn't we buy it back home and then ship it over? That would have been cheaper. So, yeah, I admit it.
I think that's what you want to say.
Yeah, he was right.
So what has surprised you then about the moving process?
I don't know. In some ways that it was like part of it was so quick in terms of once you had, it was slow in kind of getting rid of stuff or not going to take that. No, it doesn't make sense to that. That's ancient. We're going to take these things. I don't know. I guess the surprise for me was that it was more of an ordeal than I thought it would be, because I thought, having moved one way, admittedly with a bag and a suitcase, there's a bit you got to pack up and get rid of stuff. Or so, can you look after this for a while? I might be back in 12 months, 16 years later. But then with kids, you're thinking, okay, it is going to be a lot of work. We're in a decent sized house. We've kind of settled, even though we're not settling, as we were all saying. But just that, even though we'd spent a couple of months before getting into it, getting rid of stuff and downsizing, you're like, how do we still have more stuff to pack? As the two removal fellas are coming in, you go, how did I find this in the last hour? Hadn't we done this?
Yeah, it was endless.
But the other surprise would be, after they'd taken it, and so then it was 3 odd months, so we had very little, and we'd say every so often, do you miss anything? No, actually, like 1 or 2 things. You go, I wish we'd had just that, but it was only just 1 or 2 things, and the rest of you like, well.
But you know what the worst thing is? We just moved, and again, there was lots of things. It's just never ending. And I promised myself I wouldn't never ever build up a household like the one we had. But we're getting there already, and it's scary.
Yeah, I don't want to move from this house. This is the biggest house I've ever had, and it's just filled to the rafters with crap. Like moving over here, and we were like, it was literally 3 suitcases, and then we had a move cube when that eventually arrived, and we just restarted we just got rid of everything, and then we just restarted this process of accumulating things. And I guess now I'm just in that stage of looking around and going, can I get rid of some of this stuff? Like, not that I'm preparing to move, but I just think to myself sometimes, do I really, really need it? You get, again, it comes down to that once you've moved and you have that reattachment that you want to start settling down. I think that's probably one of the first reactions that I think people really do need to think about, is you don't need to start buying stuff, even if it's something that the big one is, but it's just off Facebook Marketplace and it's secondhand, or they're giving it away. It's like, do you really need it? Because even if you're not having to exchange money for it, you're just collecting things.
It's in your house. It's there. It's like when it's also the place you move into. It's this seeming like, if it's big, it's like, but there's a corner there and that corner's empty. I should just put something there.
That'd be a lovely plant or something.
Yeah, like all right, if you want to, stick something there, put some art on the wall. put a plant in the corner, and then take that itch away if you've got that itch. I will say one thing though, like if I can give one tip to anybody else though, who's moving over, for when you have to sit on hold, calling call centers, get a set of Bluetooth headphones or something, and then so you can then keep on doing other stuff, and you don't have to hold the phone to your ear or leave it loud.
On a speakerphone.
Well, that because I found like headphones was just that next level better.
That's a really good idea. I like it, but I feel like if I had it, I just go off and potter and do things, and then knowing my luck, because I have the best luck in the world, I'd go out of range from my phone just as they pick up, and I wouldn't realise. I'd just be like,
"Oh no!"
back, and then I know they're trained, aren't they, not really to hang up, but then I'd get the one that would just hang up, and then I'd have to restart it again. I'd be like, what the hell?
No, I had one. I had to call. I think it was Ergon, because it was just this ordeal of we got an account, and we got connected, and then nothing. And I rang, every time was at least an hour on hold. Wait, after you put in, press one. Yeah, I kid you not. The last call I had, the lady I admit talked to was amazing. She was a legend. But it was an hour and 23 minutes. And then, hello? Went, oh, I was like, whoa, we're on. But I sat there because I talked to one person and she sort of seemed to chastise me why I was so impatient because I want a bill.
You've been on hold for an hour and 23 minutes, mate.
Oh no, this was just
like a movie.
Yeah. So like I'd had a series of calls where you have to wait on hold and then you have to talk to somebody and then I've got to put you on hold because I've got to I'll be back. And so I thought this time, one, I'm having my call and it's happening today, even if it's 8 a.m. and I'm on this call till midnight. All right, headphones on, Bluetooth connection. Now I'll just keep working. And I would periodically look at the phone, 55 minutes, got to an hour 22 and went, hello, they're going to help you. Good. I hope you can because this is my call. But it was like, admit, I didn't go anywhere. I sat at the computer and the phone was in front of me. But I thought, no, I want to just be, it's right here. It's ready to go. And if I get hungry or have to go to the toilet, because I did, I'm just going and this call is staying connected. But like I said, I didn't go too far away from the phone.
If that was me, I would have been contemplating life. I'd have been thinking to myself, do I really need energy? Like, how much do I really need energy? It's been over an hour. I don't think I need energy anymore.
Well, we're never going to have bills, although, well, if you're not going to send me a bill, well, all right.
Do you have any regrets about the process?
Not really. I think we thought this through quite well. The only thing I guess I would do differently, and it's hard to admit it, but my husband was right. There you go. I said it publicly. He was right.
I'll stay with that moment.
We probably should have packed some things that we now have to buy new that would have just been easier to just put in another box and put it in the container. That's it. That's the only thing I probably would do differently. Other than that, I think we did quite well. Yeah.
I don't have regrets about the process, but I would say that, and it was when we had a leaving party and there are so many people that we'd gotten to know. It's not a regret, but you're kind of feeling like, I remember at one moment thinking, why are we leaving? Why are we leaving such a lovely, beautiful group of people in a lovely little place? So it's like we still stay in touch, but it's just, I don't know, not a regret, but it kind of sort of puts it front and center of just how much I guess you do have. And you're like, well, now they're going to be like my family was at the end of a video chat or whatever. Or, yeah, we'll see you when we come over eventually. And so I sense a bit of sadness there, but not regret.
It's not an identity crisis, but it's like, yeah, I guess it is really. It's a kind of a crisis within your own identity at that time. Like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Well, we didn't move over because we didn't have a good life or we felt uncomfortable or anything. We just moved because we decided we wanted to give the kids the other side of their identity, and I wanted to live here. I wanted to know if I can do it, and he wanted to go home and be more around his family. But it wasn't. The feeling was much stronger before we started the process, and then the more we got into it, we realized that actually it's not that bad here, and we love being here, and we have lovely friends, and we have my family around that were very helpful as well, and So it wasn't, your heart is torn between two places, and no matter where you are, you always want to be in the other one, and you want to make it right to both sides of the families.
Yeah.
So, and we knew that from the beginning, that was what the conversation was about. One of us will always be away from their side of the family and friends. Both, we have friends on both sides, both of us. So, but that's just what it is. That's life, So.
Thankfully, we live in a post-COVID globalized world that, apart from the cost of airfares, we can still travel around and we can still get to see all those different parts of it. And I guess if you are fortunate enough to be able to move and live in another country, probably the worst thing you can do is not to experience it. You look at you two, you're a couple that have lived in lots of different places in the world, and that's one of the things that's helped to prepare you to do that. Some people, they don't want to for whatever reason, but I guess if you have that itch and you've got that kind of, I don't want to say lifestyle, but that's part of your life that you want to do it, then no, absolutely.
And it's different because when we both moved to England in 2008. And I remember I only talked to my parents Sunday evening after a certain time because it was cheaper to be on the phone. And then my parents would call me because then they had another number that they used before the actual number because that made it cheaper as well. Yeah. Nowadays, we switch on the computer. We use WhatsApp, we use Signal, whatever it is. We just switch it on. My parents, I talk to them twice a week per video. I just bought them for Christmas a picture frame where I can, I take a picture here of the kids going swimming and I upload it to their picture frame, and within a minute they've got the picture. So they're kind of
picture frame.
Oh, seriously? You don't know about that? Oh, it's awesome. I can send you a link. It's fantastic.
Please do. And for anyone listening, if you want to know what that picture frame is that I've probably just now bought, I'm going to put it as a link in the description.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. We used to do calendars for my parents for Christmas, but I didn't want to wait. And you have lots of pictures, so now I take the picture and I quickly go into the app, send it through the app, and my parents get it, and it worked fine.
Is there a subscription that you have to pay though?
No. No, it's just a picture frame. Nice. It's just a picture frame and a free app, and then you can just upload it. You can write a text underneath. So if I have a picture and it's not quite clear what it is, I just write underneath what this was about. Or my son, because I'm flying over in May to pick up the last bits and pieces that we left behind on the very last day, he drew a picture for his grandparents, and I took a picture of it and sent it to their friends. Like, this is coming. The original is coming in May. So, it's just they're much more part of our lives, although we are much further away now than they were in 2008 when I moved to London. So it's just, technology is a great thing.
Thanks, Matt and Mel, for sharing your journey with us, and I hope it's given you all a greater insight in what it's like to move to and live in Australia. If you want to see more of what our life is like here, then make sure you check out our YouTube channel at That Johnston Life. And if anything that we've talked about has inspired you to want to make the move yourself and you're not quite sure where to start, then make sure you speak to our friends True Blue Migration Services at www.truebluemigration.com for your free visa assessment, where they'll tell you exactly what you need to do to move to this beautiful country. I know personally over the last 3 years of working together that we've helped hundreds of people in all different walks of life successfully make the move over here in sometimes the most difficult of situations. See you next time.